And this was actually from a self-advocacy conference that we were at in October, of which we were being given the very great honor of being able to speak to the group. We were able to talk about how important inclusion has been. My son was able to talk about his being able to move out into a self-directed situation. And so basically what I did is I talked about that conference and how much I felt, very much how happy I felt to see the kind of progress that's been made by self-advocates over the past 20, 25 years. It's amazing. And so I was really, I really talked about my feelings regarding being at that particular conference. The other one that I did, and this one was from January, people with disabilities thrive with support. And basically what I talked about is the kind of support that's needed out there in order for individuals with developmental disabilities to get the kind of support that they need when they need it. Some need more supports than others, but being able to talk about the kind of support that the individuals with disabilities can do and have, and how much they can accomplish when when they're given the right kind of support. So I was able to get that in the Buffalo News. The other thing is that also when it goes online, you can also hear and you can also see some of the issues that get raised in opposition to issues that you write as well, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Because sometimes, even though it may be somebody that disagrees with you, they may, those people get all kinds of stuff anyway, why do we need to, give them more support, those kind of things. It doesn't matter, it really helps, and then you get the kind of the back and forth, where you'll get people who really support it, so. The other thing is we did have an article more recently, and I'll turn it over to Todd in a couple of minutes. But the other thing is that my son is, and I mentioned, is involved in a shared living situation. And in the shared living situation he's in, it took a long process to be able to get him there. And we're not here to talk about that particular area today. However, I would say that we did successfully get him into a shared living situation, and we were able to recently. He's involved with SABA, which is which you're probably familiar with, skating for individuals with developmental disabilities and other kinds of disabilities, and it's a good organization. My son really likes it, and his particular group was going to be featured in a special thing that they had for like I'm trying to think of the right, like a special event during the his the Saba Gala on ice at the arena. And so the Buffalo News wanted to write an article, and they did write an article, and it was actually by one of their better reporters, and by the name of Gene Warner. And I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, but he wrote an article, and it's Housemates with Special Needs Launch Lives of Independence. And I'll pass this around. You don't have to read it, but what it featured, and they did a really nice job with it. And part of it is I'm hoping that over the years that many of us who have written as advocates have helped to influence people like Gene Warner in seeing that individuals with developmental disabilities can be positive, can be out there in the community, can be independent. And so what I'll do is I'll just send this around. Yes, question?
I just have a question, how you feel about media etiquette as far as the special needs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hear, so we shouldn't say that, or we should say that. I mean,
What's politically correct?
Yeah. Right.
At any given time?
Special needs kind of puts like a pity type thing, and so when do you choose to say, don't use, you could have said something else? Well,
and I think that it depends, and again, they're going to write what they want to write. It depends on who the reporters are, and I guess, I think a lot of times you have to do that on an individual basis with people. If you can, I would suggest you write an article letter to the editor to that, and because, sometimes they'll say, well, are they called consumers? Are they called clients? Those kind of issues. How about people? Yeah, right. How about people?
That's
So
awesome.
But why don't you if you
Well,
don't
let's-
mind, pass this around, and just so you can just see, and not necessarily read it, but just look at the picture. I mean, it's very positive. We were really happy with the way that it came out. There was no guarantee that it was necessarily gonna get out the way we wanted it to get out, but it did get out the way we wanted it. I don't think we could have written the article better ourselves in a lot of ways, as advocates, but it's, but writing letters to the editor is important. You can really get a good message out there. You can really help to do some influencing, and, so it is real important to try to get your voice and to be able to, or those that you really care and you really love, to be able to get your voice out there and to be able to have a positive spin, so to speak, on individuals with developmental disabilities, and to be able to get them, the general public, more able to better understand, what some of the issues are, the strengths, the positives, the successes, as well as some of the challenges that are out there as well, but not in a pitying kind of a way, because, everybody goes through different kinds of hard times at various points in their lives, some with disabilities, some without disabilities, and what we want to try to do is to get a special message out there that's really positive. You're always going to have naysayers. You're always going to have people out there that are going to be the critics. They're going to, they'll be naysaying, and to the day they die. So you're not going to influence certain people, but you want to influence as many of the general public as you can to be able to help us in the future to be able to get legislation passed, to be able to get funding where it needs to go, and those kind of issues. It's important to get those stories out there, and so that's at least my bit for, and why I feel that our being able to use the media, as a positive influencer, the print media is, in this particular case, because it can really be influential. There's magazines that can be out there. There was an article that was about my son in a health magazine. It's one of the ones you get at the doctor's office. They talked about him being fit and going to the gym, and it was a very, very positive article. It was a whole page article on him, and so there are some real positives and things that can really be out there to help to influence. So with that, I'll kick it off to my friend Ted.
Hi.
Hi.
How many of you here have wanted to write the newspaper and tell them about something that bothered you? All right.
I write lots of things.
Right. How many of you saw something and said, "I'm so mad about that. I want to write the paper and tell people what I saw"?
I've had.
When you're talking about a letter to the editor, when you're talking about an article, that's what Max is talking about. And I'm going to tell you a secret. All right? I've been an advocate for 20 years. I'm going to give you all the secrets. Ready?
Right.
Okay. I write with my heart. I edit with my head. I write a lot of letters to politicians. I write a lot of letters to the newspaper. I write a lot of stuff. And it always seems to start the same way. For some reason, I'm always mad. For some reason, my first draft is always, "Dear Governor, you suck. Signed, a dissatisfied customer." Right? And then I look at it and go, well, that's not fair. I got to tell him why he sucks. So then the next draft is, "Dear Governor, you suck, 'cause." And somewhere around draft 50, it ends up on my computer screen. It really works that way with letters to the editor. Okay? Write with your heart, edit with your head. Remember that a letter to the editor is 200 words. If you do some other columns in your newspaper that might be opinion pieces, like Max talked about Another Voice, which is done in the Buffalo News, they give you a little bit more space for that. They give you about 350 words. So what we learned is, you want to write with your heart, but you want to be brief. You want to get to the point as quick as possible. Because the more you try to flower it up and make it look good and make it look pretty, the guys, edit your letters. So they cut whole sections of it off to make it fit. Okay? So remember that is that those are the major things in writing print. You can do it. You should do it. something that bothers you, something you want the community to know, you write a letter to the editor. Because if they get 7 of them on the same issue, they're going to pick the best 1 or 2. And in they go. And maybe they might want to ask somebody to write an opinion on the other side of it because they want the issue to be discussed. And you can be the guy that does that. And this is the whole thing about why media is important. Dirty little secret number 2, right? There are only 3 things that have ever moved anything politically in this country. Money, votes, and the media. Now, as people with disabilities, do we have money?
Some, not
Some. Right. Now, we don't have the economic power of a lot of other groups of people. We do have some economic power, but remember, they refer to us as the most vulnerable. We must protect the most vulnerable, right?
Oh, of course.
No. Every time I see that, I want to write something going, nope, not me. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Media becomes important just like your vote becomes important because this is about what I said this morning. This is about speaking your mind. And here's how it relates to dealing with the media, right?
If I spoke my mind every time, I'd be in jail.
Media is about relationships. Media is about talking to the reporter. Okay?
Okay. I
And
tried
when-
to call for action once, I
Mhm.
couldn't get through.
Now,
Channel 4.
so you call, and you're lucky, you get somebody and they say, we're going to send somebody out to interview you. Okay?
That's not what we do. I work there. It's a referral service. They've changed their niche. So if you call them, they're likely to send you to the newsroom if you want to discuss an issue for coverage.
Right.
Wow.
But
Good Cosby.
suppose you've called them, all right? Or the better way you get on TV, you want to know a secret about getting on TV? Write your legislator about stuff. Okay? Because if you're seen as an expert in a particular field area, when that staffer gets the call from the news and they need an external point of view, they'll talk to you. Like they'll call me up and they'll say, can I interview you about this? Sure, absolutely, come on over. And will they do what BJ says they do? Absolutely. There is almost always, when the media comes to interview me, what they call A-roll on TV is the stuff that's that's got your face on it. And then when they're done and they're not talking to you anymore, they're going to want stuff for what they call B-roll, which they can edit in. And that's the stuff that shows you like entering or leaving, or if you see any of those pieces where they say, he's an active person with a disability, and you're rolling along, all that stuff's on B-roll. And with people with disabilities, they take that stuff really seriously because they want to, for some reason, they want to highlight the chair.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And here's the thing, I'm with Max. They're going to do what they're going to do. But what you're going to do when you talk is you're going to tell them that it's about the issue and it's not about the chair.
Yeah.
Whatever the issue is, whether it's noise in your neighborhood, services that you get as a person with a disability, whether or not it's about the plight of the working man getting a job. All right. Buffalo News came to interview me about 15 years ago now about snow removal in Buffalo. Okay? Because every year they're going to do a why you should shovel your walk piece. And they alternate it, they'll do a senior citizen and then they'll do a mom with kids. And this particular year, it was me. So they do an interview with me about why it's important to shovel their walks. And then they take my photo. And they say to me, it's going to be okay, they're not going to know exactly where you live. Okay?
Right.
Now, they don't mention my exact address. They talk about, at the time I was living at the firehouse apartment on Main Street. So they said I lived on Main Street, but when they took my photo, they forgot to crop out the address block
Oh, no.
immediately above my head to the left.
Oh.
Right?
Oh.
And this is the power of the Buffalo News. You don't think people read the newspaper? I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Next 3
Oh,
days,
yes,
I
they
got
do.
50 phone calls to my phone number because, dopey me, I was listed in the phone book. Okay? Now, they're about split half and half. About 25 of them were like, you go, that's great. Okay? About 23 of them were like, you don't like it here, you can go move where it's warmer.
Wow.
Okay? And then there was that one guy, that one creepy guy, wanted to know if I lived alone and if I slept naked.
Oh my God.
Okay? Now, this is why when you're talking to a reporter, you stay on target.
Yeah.
Because if you get off target, if you get off topic, if you wander, that story is going to go in directions where you don't want it to go.
So Todd, how do you avoid the emotions of the issue and stay on topic?
Good question.
Here's the thing. You don't escape the emotion. But what I'd do is I'd state the emotion first and get it out of the way. If you ever see somebody on TV, they talk about being upset about this, and then they move to what the other issue is. A lot of things like, they're upset about the school vote. I'm really mad that they didn't pass the budget because now my kid won't be able to take music class.
Uh-oh.
So the opening phrase is, I'm really mad. It's perfectly okay to say that. And the more you do it, the more you'll find different ways to say stuff. Okay? Like, I'm really frustrated. I'm frustrated at the system for not figuring out a way to get us to DDRO in what they call a silent protest in the Capitol. Because I get to talk about it again in a minute.
Oh, wow.
Somebody else is having a press conference, and we're just wearing our t-shirts and standing in the line of the cameras just so that we could kind of quietly show our disagreement. Now, here's the thing, and this is going to happen to you. You might be interviewed about something that you don't completely have a handle on. Okay? Or they're going to hit you at that exact wrong moment. They're going to turn that light on, okay? And they're going to put that microphone in front of your face, and all the words you thought you had, out the window like steam, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the way I do it every time. I say my name. I spell my name. I tell people where I live and what I do. Before they even ask you a question, when they say they're ready and they turn their camera on, you tell them who you are, you spell your name, you tell them where you live and what you do. And the reason why you do that is because the editors back at the office are going to want to put your name up on the screen. That text that you see, it's called chroma key. All right? And you definitely want to make sure that if they're going to misspell your name, they're going to do it fantastically. Right?
Right.
Right. So I've learned to spell my name, and doing it that way every time gives me a moment to calm down, to get used to the light, to figure out where the reporter is, because this is the next secret. You don't look at the camera, you look at the reporter. Every time. Let the cameraman do what the cameraman's going to do. You're talking to the reporter. You're having that conversation with Al Vaughters or Michael Spina from the news or whoever. You're involved in that conversation. That photographer, that videographer, they're going to do what they do. And then at the end, if they need something, they're going to ask you. But always start with who you are, spell your name, who you are, what you do. Then when they say, So how do you feel about the governor's decision to cut $50 million out of the developmental disabilities budget? Well, I can tell you, looking right at it, I think it sucks. It concerns me a great deal that necessary services for people with disabilities will be denied because of short-sighted thinking. Click. Now, what are they going to do with that when they're done? They're going to go back to the station. They're going to combine whatever footage they've got with your interview. They're going to set up the chroma key. And I guarantee you, of that whole thing I just said, this is what you're going to see on TV. You're going to see the part where I talk about it's unfortunate about services. Because they won't use vernacular language. They won't use suck. Okay? You can say it, and I encourage you to do so, but then always soften your language later. Always say another sentence to say why that bothers you. Because why it bothers you is going to be the thing that runs. What bothers you doesn't.
That's
Okay?
why I call Todd at work so often. He probably leaves to him so many messages. He probably hears my voice in his sleep.
Now, one other dirty little secret. Press conferences. I get invited to a lot of press conferences. I'm good for what they call optics. I look good. Or I communicate a message when the people that are putting together the press conference are putting together the press conference. You want the right people to say the right stuff at the right time to communicate your message, right? So, don't be afraid to go to a press conference. Don't be afraid to work with your advocate group to have one if you've got an issue that you think is strong enough. It's not that hard. You put a little thing in writing that you send out to all the papers called a press release. You do the 5 W's they taught you in school. Who, what, when, where, and why. Right? And that's when, in TV, that's when you get to be mad. Because we write press releases that say we are outraged. We are concerned. We are disaffected. That's a big word. We are dissatisfied. And then what happens is, wait a minute, people are dissatisfied. Dissatisfied people make for good news stories. And good news stories means more people watch, and the more people that watch means the more people that see the advertisements, which is how the station makes its money. Go ahead.
Why is it where if someone with a disability, they will cut certain things out, but if someone that doesn't have a disability or someone kills them, you'll see a page and a half?
Well, here's the thing. There are a lot of preconceived notions about people with disabilities. We can talk about that for a minute. Okay? Because, man, there are only 3 ways that we are ever referred to in the media most of the time. Okay? Max is lucky. Max gets the thoughtful pieces in his letters to the editor, and they write articles. But when you're covering people with disability in a news story, what is it? We're either the perpetrator or the victim. We either did the crime or we're the victim of the crime. Take a guess as to the numbers that actually are violent, that actually commit crime that the news would want to cover.
10%?
None.
50%?
Less than that.
None.
It's actually about 2%. Nationwide, it's about 2%.
Yeah.
But man, do you not hear about it every time there's a tragedy?
Yep.
And this is why letters to the editor are really important, because every time that happens, I'm writing something to letters to the editor going, shame on you. People with disabilities are more likely to be the victims of crime than the people perpetrating crime. And every time, Virginia Tech, Columbine, Sandy Hook.
And
No.
even California, University of California at Los Angeles.
Right.
Recently.
UCLA or San Bernardino,
It
right?
depends on the type of disability, and also with Columbine, it was 10 years after the incident, they retracted all of the original statements. So that doesn't exactly fit as a good example, but usually people with psychiatric disabilities are more marginalized in the media than the rest of them.
Yeah, but you see, we're always the ones that get caught up in it. From a developmental disability standpoint, we're always the ones that get caught up because we're the ones that are just on the other side of that. Developmentally, we might not understand how powerful a gun is, so we shouldn't have the right to own a gun.
Yeah, the victim aspect would be the police, how they treat us.
Yeah.
That's covered somewhat, but not totally, I don't think.
Now, I like that thought. I might get back to that. Hold on to that. You go ahead.
There were also issues on which an agency, for example, People Inc., the situation where a staff member of that agency's home will either take the resident and go do something wrong with them, not bring them back on time, or get them to do a crime they don't want to do, and it's so awful.
Right, but that whole thing that's rare. That's a rare example, something that doesn't happen all the time. And rare examples are the things that end up in the newspaper because the old saying, Max remembers, if it bleeds, it leads.
And I'm gonna bring up,
I got you. Go ahead, Eric.
I'm gonna bring up a comment that, something in relation to what Bobby said about the police.
Adrian.
I'm sorry, Adrian. If you live in an IRA and the staff call the police come running and right away, and the individual is usually assumed to be guilty. And they're ready. The police don't help the individual. They assume that if you live in an IRA, you can't think for yourself, so the staff
Now, Eric.
have all authority.
Now, Eric, I'm going to use you as an example. Because right there is where we get drawn off. Right there is where it turns left. Because when we're talking in the media about people with disabilities not being the target of crime, and that conversation comes up, what does the reporter do? No, the reporter goes, this isn't what I came to write about. Do these people know what they're talking about?
Yeah.
As advocates, we always have to stay on target. It's an important thing he's bringing up. We're not going to say it isn't. But unless that's what the article's about, we don't bring in things that are not germane to the article, that relate to the article. Because if you draw them off too far, they go, wait, what's this? Because the one thing that reporters hate to do is waste their time. And the reason why, and I'm going to go back and raise this point again, the reason why it's critical is that every time you see something in the paper about somebody who's violent, or my favorite, I will use my favorite media cause celeb, the folks that got out of the DDRO and went to live in West Seneca, they were previous sex offenders.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, the world is going to explode. Property values are going to drop. Your kids are going to disappear. Nobody's going to be safe because these 4 guys get their federally protected right to live in the community.
I'd like to interject, and one of the things that Todd said, and get to your question in a second, Marie, but it's important as a person, as a spokesperson or an advocate, that you also develop credibility with the media, because one of the things that Todd's talking about, and the reason that people come to Todd and they come to people like BJ and myself, is because we've established a certain amount of credibility with people in the media, and that's something